Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, the first half of the month of December has been very warm for parts of Canada, north central Canada. And all that cooler than average air has really been tucked down here from the southern part of the United States and at times all the way over to the Carolina coast. What's got us here has been this large ridge that's been setting up here, giving us this highly amplified flow. And what I want to be talking about with respect to that flow is how it's going to change, what that change is going to mean, and it's really going to center throughout much of this winter around drought. So let's get our latest update of the drought monitor. Now, we're not talking about drought in the Carolinas. Our focus is really going to be in the western part of the United States, and this is why you in the Carolinas need to care about this map, even though our biggest drought regions are pretty far away from you. You see, if we do not see the development of the subtropical jet stream, which is the one that brings in the flow like this into the southwest and also brings it along the southern part of the U.S. and into the southeast, if that doesn't develop at some point during this winter, we're not going to see this drought picture change too much. And because of the lack of it developing, we've already seen degradation and drought over the last couple of months. So nearby, down here in parts of South Carolina, really just the very edge, but getting into parts of Georgia, we have seen a one-class degradation. We get over into this part of Texas. Look at the southwest with respect to the Four Corners and then into California. These are just things that we have to be watching because it will be critical to understand how the spring and summer pattern sets up depending on the western United States drought situation. So we're going to watch it, keep an eye on it. I'll keep you updated throughout this winter. Now, speaking of winter, our accumulated snowfall departure map has been updated. And I'm just showing you this because I know as we're approaching the Christmas holiday here, we want to be thinking about maybe where there's going to be snow and if we're going to be getting any of it. But it's important to see the lack of that subtropical jet stream keeping the Sierra Nevada mountains and the Klamath Mountains over here in parts of California, these right in through here below average. Parts of the Rockies are missing out on the snow, although the southern Rockies have seen quite a bit of it. The Great Lakes, this is a real testament of the lack of cold air. Can you see it? The Great Lakes on their leeward side here not picking up major snowfall yet this year. So with that as a backdrop, where do you need to go over the next week to see snow? Well, this particular map shows you through Christmas night, all right? The locations around the U.S. that have a probability of getting another 3 inches or more of snowfall. So if I was in the Carolinas, I'd get on the I-95 corridor and head north, but just don't do it right yet because the winter storm that's coming our way is going to be pretty powerful here in parts of the Northeast. And this is what I mean. Just through that same time period, but really most of this is coming by the end of this week. This map shows you the probability of getting a foot of snow. So you can see that as you get up to parts of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and then up into New York, all the way into Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, the probability there is very, very high. Now, lined up behind that are several systems. Here's the one that's making for the very soggy morning this morning, that little trough right there I circled here on Monday. But here's the system that's coming through at the end of the week, the one that'll follow that and hit the northwest, the one that follows that and follows that. In other words, the North Pacific is kind of loaded here with systems that are going to come across and eventually impact the United States. But I do want you to draw your attention to what you see right up here. You can kind of tell the circulation is clockwise, and that tells us that there is an anticyclone or a high pressure cell that's now occupying the Arctic. And that's critical to a change in the pressure patterns, which may signal a bit of a shift over in our temperature and precipitation patterns moving toward the end of this month and into next month. So why discuss all of that? Well, it all boils down to the rate at which these systems develop and move. And while this is the trough that today is keeping us soggy, one follows it, here's another, and here's another. And what I would like for you to see is that because of how open this pattern is, just watch, you're going to keep seeing these troughs sweep through the United States. See them just moving through there? That was 10 days. And the reason why I showed you that so quickly was just so that you could tell that the pattern is unblocked and it's open and it's moving. And in the near term, this is what we're dealing with. So late last night into early this morning, this weak low has formed. And throughout early this morning, it is spreading this cold rain across parts of North Carolina, starting from the west and going throughout the east throughout the day today. So this is 9 a.m. or actually 10 a.m. East Coast time, getting into the late morning and early afternoon. That's going to move through very quickly. So by 3 o'clock this afternoon, we could be seeing the last little bits here of rainfall going across, right up here along the coast. Now you did see just a little bit of snow. If I back that up, some snow spreading to the north. So see it there? But that clears out. High pressure comes in for Tuesday and even into Wednesday. But as you notice, as we get into early Wednesday morning, that high pressure starts to exit, and our next low pressure system is taking shape here right in the mid-Mississippi River Valley. And my concern is that as this one pulls toward the Carolinas and eventually up to become this powerful nor'easter right here off of the Jersey Shore, on Wednesday morning, see the pink showing up here in the models? This indicates that the atmosphere might possibly have a pretty strong temperature inversion about a mile above our heads, which is going to give us an excellent setup for possibly having some early morning freezing rain. We're going to get some cold air damming. Can you see the high pressure cell sitting here? Some cold air damming right along the Appalachian Mountains, and I'm concerned here about that early morning freezing rain threat. Now to get that, the temperature profile of the atmosphere must look like this. So check it out. I'll just draw a line right here. That line I'm drawing, if you go to this side of it on this sounding diagram, you have above freezing temperatures. Go this way, you have below freezing. Now what I'm about to shade in for you right here, we call a melting layer. So what I shaded in is, as you go up in the atmosphere, there'll be this pocket, the top of it here and the bottom of it there, where the atmosphere is expected to be above freezing. But if you notice, the surface temperature down here is right around freezing or just below it. So you end up having precipitation that falls, typically in the form of snow. It melts in the melting layer, which I just drew an arrow to, and then it refreezes down here again when it hits the surface. So this is why when you look out here at the probability of getting at least 1/10 of an inch of freezing rain through Thursday morning, we see relatively high probabilities here. So I think what we need to do is, if you are to the west of the line that I'm drawing right now, I want you to be very cognizant of this through the middle of this week, because we do have the potential for some ice accumulation. Now, I'd like to show you that and then how much total precipitation we're expecting out of these next couple of systems. So here's the one early this morning. So it was sitting right here where North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee all come together. That's where the low pressure center was sitting. Let's play this forward. We've already seen that system move on out, right? So there it is again. And the higher pressure builds in for Tuesday. But then the next storm system takes shape, and here it is Wednesday morning. So you can see the pinks in here representing that the models are picking up on that ice threat. Well, as the day goes on Wednesday, this is Wednesday afternoon and evening, the low takes shape right along the North Carolina coast and then moves up here toward this part of the mid-Atlantic. Now, I'm not expecting snow at this point, but in the highest elevations in the Appalachian Mountains on the backside, we could get a little bit here. But what you're going to notice is this storm system is going to wrap up quickly by Thursday evening for North Carolina and then really start to hammer the Northeast into Thursday morning. See that there? And this could potentially be a major, major snowmaker for this particular region. Now, after that goes through, things calm down for Friday and then getting into the end of the week. Now, we might get, there's just a chance, I'll just show it to you here, on Thursday night into Friday morning. Could be some cool enough air to get some scattered snow flurries on the backside of this, but that's not going to last long. High pressure builds in, drying things out. And as we work our way into the weekend, it's relatively dry until this frontal boundary early next week comes across the Carolinas. But that, again, will be next Monday, and I'll have more information about it for you then. But that low is actually connected all the way up here over the Hudson Bay. Okay, total snowfall. You can see the corridor right in through here of heaviest snow. And the European model is picking up on a band there stretching from parts of northern Virginia, Maryland, getting into West Virginia, but Pennsylvania, New Jersey. There could be a pocket in there of anywhere between 8 to 15 plus inches of snowfall in total. But about us, over the next 5 days, down here farther to the south, this is how much total precipitation we're expecting. So with these next couple of systems coming through, they could possibly add up to some places here in North Carolina over 1.5 inches to 2 inches of rainfall. It gets a little bit drier the farther you get toward the south and east parts of both states here, but I think the European model's got the best representation of this precipitation. Now, as we work our way out to Christmas Eve, here is the setup of the jet stream. The tropospheric polar vortex is here. So the flow is going to go south of it, build into a ridge over the west coast, and there'll be a trough in the midsection of the United States. Now the ridging that you see here will allow our temperatures to warm back up, but with troughs continuing to sweep through, I expect the pattern to still remain active. So that's why when we look out here, which this would be basically the week of Christmas, we don't see the models picking up on a strong precipitation signal one way or the other. And we're going to have to wait till we get into that week before we see if that flow pattern, again, it's doing something like this, right? Kicks off a system that comes through just at the right time here as we work our way toward, December 24th, 25th, 26th, and possibly impacts those that are going to do a little bit of traveling during this particular Christmas. But it's not going to be brutally cold. Look over there at the left. This is what the polar vortex is doing in the stratosphere. It seems to be regaining its composure and strength, and then as you saw in the animation, heading here to be just between parts of northern Europe and Greenland right there. So the polar vortex did become a bit disrupted, but then it's regaining. See the little line I'm tracing here? It's regaining some of its strength, and it is not dipping way down here, which would be a major disruption that could cause a lot of problems and really send brutally cold temperatures farther to the south. So what do we have today? Well, while we're waiting for that rain to spread here early in the morning, we're warmest along the coast for max temperatures. But as you noticed, it's going to change pretty quickly as we get into the day on Tuesday, anywhere between 5 to 10 degrees colder than average. On Wednesday morning, this is when I'm most concerned about the freezing rain threat, and it's going to be right in this corridor, right in through here, all right? So much warmer along the coast and cold in the interior. You can see it right there. Going from Wednesday into Thursday, our temperature's still below normal as the big nor'easter exits the northeastern part of the U.S. And here's Friday's temperatures. And you can already start to see the warmth that is here in the midsection of the country spreading this direction. When does it get here? Well, there's Saturday, and into Sunday we rebound back up toward normal temperatures again. Beyond that, let's go out to the 5 to 10 day time period. Notice that the cold keeps reloading in both models here in northern Canada to Alaska. We had some more broad-scale warmth that will spread from the west to the east, eventually getting to us over here on the east coast. But really, much of the next 5 days and then a lot of day 5 through 10 to get a true recovery going back well above average, I'm not seeing, at least as we work our way out to Christmas Eve. Beyond that, the models have some similarities but some differences. The GFS being much quicker says, hey, let's bring in some warmer conditions, and the Europeans says, let's put the brakes on that, keeping things much cooler than average, while the warmth is connected here across the Canadian prairie into the northern plains of the US as the cold shifts more toward Greenland. All right? That's what we're seeing in this temperature pattern beyond that point. Now, when I look out even farther, I'm going to use the tropics to help guide this. The MJO is currently in phase 5. And it's forecast to weekly move into phase 6 and possibly over into phase 7. Now, thinking about the correlation of this tropical feature called the MJO and our temperature patterns, broadly speaking, when it's in phase 6, which is this kind of wedge right in through here, we tend to keep that colder air here, like we just saw in the forecast, and in general are better chances for having more mild conditions across the lower 48. But as you notice, when you get out here toward phase 7, the colder air tends to be more, have a better chance of advancing farther to the south. And we tend to ridge out over the southeast, keeping us a bit mild when we look longer term. That's why the rest of the month really resists bringing in sustained long time periods of much below temperatures. The tropics just aren't hooked up that way. But as we get into January, if the MJO comes over here to phase 8, 1, and 2, that's really going to give us a change in our pattern. Now, let's look globally at some of the big features. La Nina, right here. Some important changes. While the trade winds are still anomalously strong in through here, they've weakened on the backside. And close to South America, these ocean temperatures are starting to warm back up and the westerly winds are returning. That means that the strong trade winds are kind of fizzling out. Now, this would make sense. La Nina and El Nino typically fade right around Christmas time. In fact, remember this, El Nino is referring to Jesus, and the Peruvian fishermen that named it, again, Peru is right here, named this feature of the warming of the waters and the cooling of the waters, okay? But they named the warming of the waters after the baby, El Nino, the little boy, Jesus, okay? And I just want you to know that bit of history. And it's almost always because it peaks right around that time. Okay, long story short, we still see this push of stronger trade winds here. But you see the reds around the cooler colors I circled? That tells me that this La Nina is probably making its last big push. So over the next 15 days, good rising motion here, sinking motion there, and we're going to return into week 2 to better rising motion over South America. And that's really one of the more dominant factors controlling global markets at this point. So look at what this is going to do. These graphics represent recent precipitation variability and differences from normal. And we're going to go right here to Mato Grosso. Now, just for perspective, Mato Grosso grows the equivalent of an Illinois plus an Iowa soybean crop. So it's very important for global ag. They're currently sitting at about a 15-inch deficit in rainfall. That a very late start to the monsoon, a dry time period at the beginning of November, and then a much drier one mid to late November. It's rained quite a bit recently, but we see that over the next week, it's going to be dry. Mato Grosso's here. It's going to be dry, upwards of a 3-inch deficit over the next week in rainfall, and warm. Temperatures here 2 to 5 degrees Celsius above average. That would put them in the upper 30s, lower 40s Celsius, which is approaching the century mark in Fahrenheit. But beyond that, we see that the models are bringing the rainfall back in for January, for the end of December and January. And it's going to get drier down in Argentina. Now, this is a pattern I expect to hold for a lot of January, and this is the reason why. I went back and looked at all of the La Nina events that are similar to 2020, and I just kind of, you can see I'll put a wave packet around them here. See how they kind of bottom out right about here at the number 52? That would be the 52nd week of the year, and they started to recover. In those years, which are listed right down here, February tended to have great upper level support in the flow of the atmosphere to allow for air to rise. That could mean that February could be wet, January and February could be wet for Brazil, which would be a major problem if the wet time periods come when they're trying to harvest the soybeans. There's already a delay that U.S. markets are going to cover. This could further that delay and push back when they plant safrinha, which means second crop, corn and cotton. Now, this isn't a slam dunk. This is just an analysis. We have to watch to see if this develops. So drought early, possibly wet late, could be problematic for South America. I'll just keep an eye on it and let you all know what I think is going to happen. Hey, have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you again next Monday. Thanks.